Hello, friends. Welcome back to Vlogmas Day 11. I cannot believe we are on our second to last video of the Vlogmas season. Today, I thought it would be fun to do a what I eat in a day or a day of eating in my life. I love watching these kind of videos because I love getting food ideas. And so I thought I would do one myself. I also particularly like doing this, following this for people who are not on diets. A lot of times what I eat in the videos are heavily steeped in restrictive eating and diet culture and like body shaming and all that stuff. That is not the vibe here. I just kind of eat what my body wants to eat and what feels good to me. I don't put a ton of pressure on myself at this point in my life. And I think we'll get into that a little bit. Kind of my changing journey to food over the years, and yeah, we'll kind of talk through what I eat. I don't have a real typical day of eating. I switch it up all the time. And so I will try to talk about what is typical and what's not typical. What is very typical is what the first thing you saw in the video, which was around 5:30, having coffee. I typically will prep coffee in the morning or at night before we go to bed, and it starts brewing in the morning around 5, and it's usually done around 5:10. And I will have about 3 little cups of coffee, like 6-ounce cups of coffee, over the course of like 3 or 4 hours. My first cup will be around 5, between 5 and 6, and then I'll have a second cup. And then usually I'll do any kind of workout or movement practice I'm going to do, and I'll have my third cup with breakfast. What you see me doing now is baking bread. I was really off schedule. I'm technically off of work right now for my winter break, but I still have work to do. I'm not like actually fully off yet, but I did sleep in this day, or at least I didn't even sleep in. I just took my time and didn't rush because I had nowhere to be. So I usually would be done with breakfast at this point, but instead I was baking some bread and hadn't even made breakfast yet. But I am making the Japanese milk bread. One of you recommended that as a sandwich bread. I made my first loaf, I think, in a Vlogmas video. But this is, I think, my 4th loaf now. It's become our go-to sandwich bread, and I love it. It does not last very long in our home, though. And what you see me making right now is, I think it's called a tong song. And it is essentially a natural preservative that is common in Japanese baking, which is really cool. It keeps the bread super moist and fresh for longer. It's really cool. So it's just water, milk, and flour kind of boiled down until it becomes like this paste. And you just put it in with when you bake the bread, and the bread stays incredibly soft. Like, it does not go stale like other breads might. And I think this is the reason I think that this is going to be our bread moving forward, because everyone in the family loves it. I tried 2 other sandwich bread recipes. Neither of them were good, and this one we're thrilled about. So we're keeping up with it. It takes really, over the course, not all hands-on time, but it takes about 3.5 hours to make. So I knew I was going to have it for lunch. And I thought maybe the kiddo would have it for lunch. So I thought I wanted to get it done early in the morning. And that is what we're doing. I just put all the ingredients into my bread maker and then let it run, really. And then let it rise. And then you'll see how I continue out throughout the day. But really, at this point, all I'm having to do is get the ingredients put in the bread maker. And the next thing, I'm just kind of getting the sourdough starter taken care of for the day, and then we're moving on to actually making breakfast. At this point, I am so hungry. I normally eat exactly at 7, and at this point it's almost 9, which is normally when I'm starting work, so I was like way behind. But I had also done a workout that day, so I knew I wanted to have something with a lot of protein. I usually try to eat a lot of protein in the morning generally, just because it gives me a lot of Like it makes me feel, I don't know, my body just likes it. It helps me to focus. It helps a lot of things. But I really make sure to do that if I get a workout in, because it helps for my muscles to rebuild. So today I wanted eggs, and I had made bagels. So I wanted a bagel to go with it, but I knew I wanted a lot of protein. And so I was like, well, I'm going to make some eggs to go alongside the bagel. I do not have a typical breakfast necessarily, but a pretty common breakfast for me is some form of an egg, some form of fruit, often with yogurt and honey. This particular day, I decided to make an egg scramble to go with the bagel, and then I had an orange on the side. The way that I think about food, well, here's like, I think we need to talk a little bit about like food history first, like my food history. I have the tendency to be more on the restrictive side. That is the easier path for me. And I honestly think of it like when I have friends who are like alcoholics, like recovering alcoholics, they always call themselves an addict, because it's like something they're in relationship to always, and something they're always kind of having to stay aware of. And I think that's my relationship to my fear of eating, like my desire to not eat. It is something I'm in forever relationship to. And I can catch myself sometimes with those sneaky little thoughts, little tricky thoughts that come up. And I have to kind of stay vigilant against it, because we all deserve nourishment. Now, one way that I've helped my brain is to never think about taking away food, but always thinking about adding in food. So if I want a bagel and my brain is like scared of it, I will go, what do I feel like I need to be having? Or what does my body want or need that I can add in? And typically for me, that is protein, fat, or fiber of some kind. And I like to have nutrients as well, right? Of course. So if I want a bagel, well, okay, how do I get my protein? I'm going to do cottage cheese and eggs. How am I going to get my fiber? I'll add spinach. I'll add peppers. I'll add an orange. I'll add some, green onion to it. And that is just a really helpful way for me to, because I deeply value my health. I deeply value feeling good in my body, but I do not, and oftentimes I have favored a fear, like a desire to not eat over my own nourishment. And that is not something that I want to do ever again. And this really helps me. So today, that's kind of how I approached my breakfast. I was like, I want a bagel, but that doesn't feel like good enough for me. So I was like, well, what can I add to make it more nourishing? And so I just added in, I made it a veggie scramble. I added in the cottage cheese to make it more protein heavy. And I tossed an orange in there because for more fiber, and because I love oranges. So that is kind of how I approached it. I'm not telling you how you should approach it. That's just what has been really nice for me in healing my relationship to food. But I really want to be clear that I don't think it's something that, like, I feel like I have the healthiest relationship to food that I've ever had, where I just trust myself with it. Generally, I have a really balanced relationship to food. I don't restrict myself. But I also eat relatively nourishing most of the time. And I don't think that people always recognize that when you are not in a traditionally thin body, or like not in a body that people would associate with having a good relationship to food. And I think I watch a lot of people who do these like what I eat in a day videos as someone who's not on a diet. And a lot of times people will make comments like, she's definitely eating more than that. She's, or they'll count the calories out that someone's eating to try to like understand why someone could have a pretty balanced diet and still be in a larger body. I think it's because we have trained ourselves, or we've been trained our whole lives to be that's my breakfast. It was very good. To be like concerned about it, or to be, that you can't have a healthy relationship to food and be in a larger body. And I think a lot of times people think like, oh, you probably just like have like uncontrollable relationship to food. And that's for me never been the case. I've always had the opposite problem. And so it's just really interesting to note, like, my even thinking about making this video, I was kind of conscious of those kind of comments potentially being on my content. And I do think I'm in a place where I can handle that kind of stuff, but this is a pretty balanced day for me. If anything, I think like that was a large breakfast for me typically. But it was very good. I ate every bite of it and I loved every bite of it. And some days I'm hungrier than other days. Sometimes I'm not very hungry. And I generally just listen to what I'm feeling and I let it guide those decisions. Or if I have a workout, obviously I'm going to be hungrier than on days that I don't work out. Like, that's pretty much how bodies work. And so, yeah, that is just kind of something that I've been thinking about with wanting to do this video, but at the same time, kind of being conscious of how these go for people sometimes. But my breakfast was great. After breakfast, it was time to shape the bread. And this is kind of how I do it. I just roll it out. It says like 9 by 5, and then I fold it into itself, and then I roll that out, and then I roll it up. Normally I do this in 4 pieces, but for whatever reason, this day I did it into 3, and it worked fine. But normally I do 4. I don't know why I didn't this day. And also they were not all the same size. I don't have a scale that will let me weigh out dough. Like, it's not big enough. I need one, and I'll probably get myself one soon, but I just don't have one yet. So I can't tell what size the dough is. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, and that is not a skill that I possess. It's just kind of very off. Like, this piece of dough right here is like so much larger than the other 2. You'll see when it bakes too, it's a little lopsided, but it doesn't taste any different. So I'm not that stressed over it. But I wanted to get this bread kind of made and ready to go. And then I let it rise while I took a shower. And just kind of covered it with a towel and went and took a shower, did all the things, and then came back around 11:30, and it was nice and risen at this point. So now I just need to put it in the oven, and it bakes for like 30 minutes, and then it's done. And I generally let my bread cool all the way before I use it. But this day I cut it open a little bit before it was totally cool, and it still turned out great. So all in all, I think it was a good experience. And then it was time for me to make some tea. Normally I try to have tea at 9. Again, this day was like really off schedule just because it's winter break. But normally I make myself some tea right around 9 when I sit down to work. But today I was a very fluid day for me. So I didn't put that pressure on myself. I just made some tea right after I got out of my shower, after I put the bread in the oven. And I have my tea advent, and I hadn't really been pulling from it. So I had 2 days to pull from, and I pulled them. I also realized recently that each of those little doors have like a little motivational message, and I haven't been reading them. So it would have been fun for us to read those together, but I didn't read them. I haven't even read them yet, if I'm honest. But I got my teas. I'll show you the ones that I got out of here. And go ahead and grab my little mug. I should say I'll tell you about this one. I had the Big Ben. It was a black tea, so It has caffeine. And then I got this one. It's the orange and menthol, like mint. And that's the one I ended up making because it was caffeine free. Another tea that I got that I loved was a Earl Grey rooibos tea. So it was caffeine free, but it was Earl Grey. Has by far my favorite tea so far. But this one was pretty good. My mouth still tasted like toothpaste when I drank it, so I don't really know what it tasted like, if I'm honest. But it was nice. I love having a little tea in the morning. To I don't know. I feel like it's nice. I want to always have a warm beverage. And if you're wondering, I do drink water. I promise. I try to drink like 3 large mason jars a day. And, but I just also want a bunch of warm beverages. And so, the bread bakes for like half an hour and then it is done. And I took it out of the oven and immediately put it on a rack to cool. I have never burnt myself more than the season of my life when I'm like baking and cooking so much. I have gotten like, especially my left hand, for whatever reason, I have so many like burn marks and cut marks on that hand. But I burnt myself again, like pulling the bread out of the oven because, I don't know. I need to always be wearing those gloves anytime I'm touching something hot. But that is the bread. It turned out so good. It's almost gone already. But you can see how it kind of like tiered down in size. But I'm back now. The bread is cool at this point. It's much later. I wanted to make some lunch. So I am just cutting off some of the bread to make a sandwich. And it's really fun to be able to like bake bread and then just like use it a few hours later, like just to immediately jump right in to having it. I was planning to have some leftover chili that day, but there was enough for one bowl and I gave it to my husband. So I was thrilled to make a sandwich, honestly. I love a simple little lunch sandwich. I just think it is top notch. Easy lunch, one of my favorite things. I don't know. If you're from the South, Duke's mayonnaise is where it is at. That is the only option. And so I'm just making my sandwich with a little bit of mayonnaise. I'm doing, I think it's ham today, cheese and pickles. And like literally that's it. I will say we've decided for the next year I think I'm trying to cut the grocery bill, right? So I'm doing all these things, trying to figure out like, well, where is money getting lost in the groceries? And I've switched my brain to looking at things through a volume price point instead of a kind of looking at it as cost per use versus like total cost. And it is really changing my brain. Like butter, for example, we can buy a pound of Amish butter for like $12, but a third of that, I think, in the stick form is like $5 to $6 sometimes. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so much cheaper for me to buy the butter I really want, the one I want more, even. And I feel the same way with cheese, like pre-sliced cheese and pre-shredded cheese. It does not taste as good, but it's always like the cheaper option, or I've always thought it was like cheaper to buy that way or more convenient, I guess, too. But oh my gosh, the little like sticks of cheese is like $1.50. If it's not cut and shredded, I don't know. It really like broke my brain a little bit. The difference in cost. So this is our last piece of sliced cheese. I think for a while, I'm going to be buying the blocks and running with that because it does not make sense to pay like $4 just because I want someone to have cut it for me. Like, I can cut it. So that's it. And then with this bread, y'all, I just straight up ate the butt of the bread. I love this bread so much. It does not matter to me if the crust is like part of the good part. we always like waste the butts of the bread at our house. But I just did a sandwich, and then I just had grapes. We love the cotton candy grapes, and big fan. And I just, gave them a little rinse and put them in a little bowl, and that was my lunch. Nothing too crazy. And in terms of what is typical for lunch, I don't think I have a typical lunch. It's always different, but often it's if we have leftovers, it's leftovers. I try to make soup on Sundays, and that gives us leftovers for like a solid 2 or 3 days. And then it really depends on that at that point if we are using every plate or if we're not. With every plate, we get pretty much a perfect portion for 2 people. And if we're not using every plate, we often have leftovers. But this week was an every plate week, so the soup was like our only leftover, and that was that pretty much. So this time I am just making a little simple Sammy. And gosh, there's always dishes in this kitchen. I feel like it's never void of dishes. But y'all, that's literally it. That's my whole lunch. So exciting. After lunch, we always do afternoon coffee. And this particular day, Obes was home. So we did, I made espresso, he made milk, which is one of my favorite things that we do as a little team. And that's pretty much it. I made espresso, he made milk. And then I made myself a little brown sugar latte. I just put a scoop of brown sugar in the cup and then poured the milk in and the espresso in, and it's really nice. So nothing too exciting. And then we have dinner. So for dinner, we have every plate this week. We usually don't do every plate on weeks we have the kiddo, but we had the kiddo kind of 2 weeks in a row for the holidays. So we had it coming anyway, and I didn't want to skip it. So we just ran with it. And we, tonight was, I believe, it was black bean soup. And this recipe was really, really good. It was pretty straightforward, very, very simple. That's one of my favorite things about every plate is how simple it is just to make something really yummy. It was done in like less than 30 minutes and was very minimal prep on my part, and I could just let it cook. And it was done mostly in the simmering process while I cleaned the kitchen or, work on other things. In terms of saving money on groceries, I feel like every plate might stay. It is for us like $60 for a week of meals. And we get 4 meals, and then we usually have other things we can kind of hodgepodge around. That's pretty like cost effective, honestly. So I think it might stay. We'll see, how it plays out over time. But as of right now, I do think it's going to stay. And sometimes they'll give us like these bonuses. Like this week, they gave me a free add-on, and I added on a Caesar salad kit. And that was really helpful because it kind of helped boost a meal. So tonight, I knew that the soup was, oftentimes the soup would be plenty, but this night I knew like we probably want to boost it up a little bit. So I just put the salad kit together, and it was really easy. Buying the salad kit through every plate, I think would still be like $5 or so. So even if it hadn't been free, it would have been pretty cheap and affordable just to have like some added stuff. Sometimes you'll get things at every plate that need a side, and you'll want to add your own. And so this was nice. They crushed up the croutons, and it was so good. Like we were like, okay, I'm going to crush my croutons from now on. But I just whipped up that simple salad. And for dinner, we did the soup and salad. And then for the kiddo, we had leftover pasta from the night before, and then the salad. And that was it for dinner. So that is about it, friends. Like I drank a bunch of water And that is what I ate today. And I had a lot of fun in the kitchen, getting some bread made, making a yummy dinner, keeping things pretty simple. But I hope that this was fun for you in any way possible. These are fun for me. And I think I have an Every Plate like coupon or like discount code. So because they sponsored the podcast. So if I still have that, if it's still active, I will put that in the show notes for you as well. And let you guys have your, if you want to try it out, you can probably try it out. So I'll grab that. And that's it, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you in our last Vlogmas video, which is wild, on Christmas Day. So I'll see you on Christmas. Bye.